What is a female? Matt Walsh recently came out with a new vlog, stating what is a female, and like, what is God? I just wanted to add in that when I do these vlogs, I do them in one-offs, right? I don't edit these typically. I just shoot straight from the hip. That's it. I just shoot straight from the hip. I don't need to have a big, pre-organized, like licked and stuck together concepts, to make an argument. I can just tell you exactly how it is, from my point of view, because I'm talking about what I know, right? I'm not talking about some theoretical sort of thing. I'm just saying it. I'm now returning to your regular scheduled programming. In the Christian sense of the word, God is a creator, right? In a very Christian sense. Now, in other religions, God is a force. Or in another religion, God is multiple things, right? There's no one particular consensus on what God is, right? All around the entire world, in all kinds of different religions, there's no one particular concept of what God is, and yet all religions, all peoples around the world have this concept of God. Well, the same is true of women or men, right? Or non-binary, intersex, non-binary, androgynous, etc. type people. If you look at like the ancient god Shiva, right? The ancient god Shiva was pretty much androgynous. You look at ancient like pictures of the Buddha in Tibet and stuff like that, and Buddha had breasts, like legit had breasts. There's some Tibetan analogy of Buddha having the breasts of a 16-year-old girl or something, which is really weird, but I think it had to do with like an aspect of beauty and femininity. And not to mention too, like, 1,000 years ago, marriage happened much earlier and that sort of thing. Sorry about the do-rag, my hair is a mess today. And so like if you look, this is true of all things. Like this is true of a lot of things. Like if you look at the concept of government, what is a government? We have 3 different general consensus of what is an acceptable form of government in the world today, in mainstream governance. You have communism, which is crazy, right? We have socialism, which is not communism, and has been utilized in relation to fascism, such as with the Nazis. We have capitalism, right, which is just progressively eating itself. There's so many different forms of government. Then there's dictatorships and just every which way you could possibly imagine, right? If you look at the ancient Chinese, not even ancient Chinese, if you look at Chinese 175 years ago, right, to hundreds of years ago, in terms of marriage, just marriage. I mean, China is a collection of ethnicities. China isn't just one, like, Chinese aren't all Han, right? Chinese are a collection of different ethnicities, from like Vietnam all the way over to Thailand. There's a whole collection of different ethnicities, and then countries encompassing those various ethnicities, right? And Han is just one of them. Han does not make up the entirety of Chinese people, from China to Hong Kong to Taiwan. If you ever take a walk down the street in Hong Kong or something, you will clearly notice that there are very different types of Asians who are kind of like all Chinese in a way, but not, right? They're all Chinese, and and they're all of slightly different ethnicities, or subsequent generations of mixed ethnicities. If you look at the way the Chinese did marriage every which way from Sunday, right? The Chinese they had walking marriages, they had group marriages, they had matriarchy, they had patriarchy, right? They had all different, they did marriage every which way you could possibly imagine, right? And a traditional sort of idea of marriage, which is very patriarchal, is something like one man married to multiple women. So even one of the lineages I was a part of, one of the masters was at one point married to 2 women. He never consummated the marriage apparently, but he was married to 2 women, right? And that was a very typical Chinese thing to do. It's not like that in Canada or the UK, because polygamy is not acceptable, because we're largely Christian society, right? But we have done marriage every which way different possible, right? It is like this with everything. What is clothing? Clothing has multiple different ideas of what makes up a garb, right? In Bali, they wear a sarong, literally just a wrap. For men and women, there's no differentiation, right? So, like what is a female? If I had to tell you exactly what a female is, then I would have to start dictating what the role of the female is, right? And that could be varied. That is varied all over the globe, right? It has varied all throughout history. Points of history before, say, Christianity, matriarchy was very common and prevalent, right? Even Christianity reflects an aspect of pagan matriarchy. It wove that into it as well, right? Like it is endless. But if you go into India or something like that, the traditional place for a woman is behind the man, literally walking behind the man, not beside him, behind him, right? You go to England, and you have a female queen. You've had a female prime minister. You look at lesbian couples, for example. Lesbian couples who have children, both women can breastfeed in a lesbian couple. Anyone who has breasts apparently can breastfeed, right? So if there's 2 parents and they both have breasts in that family, they can breastfeed, even if one is not the biological mother, or a genetic donor of some sort, right? So what makes up a mother? If you adopt a child, right, into a family, and you adopt the child isn't related to you or any of your family by blood, right? But you become the child's mother. Are you not the child's mother? Right? You want to talk biology. Are you not the child's mother? Right? And why does that relationship happen? Because it's healthy. The French Canadians in Canada adopted, when they started coming over here, a lot of them were Baptists, and they came over and they started adopting a lot of, native Irish kids who and just had this practice, just literally just adopting orphans into their family hearth, right? As their own, right? As their own flesh and blood. They're not biologically related, Biologically, they are not family. Right? What is a car? A car is a method of transportation. You go to Asia, you see the East Indians doing the car one way with 3 wheels. You see, I've been in China and I've seen people with like a 3-wheeled thing with the motor way out in the front, or stretched out like man-made cars, and just like everything you could possibly imagine under the sun, So what makes a woman, right? Someone. This is hard to pigeonhole because it's diverse. Right? One other aspect of it too is identity politics. Right? So it's like saying that like Walsh is a very English name, right? So let's say that Matt identifies as being English. His ancestry is English. Or my prime example was Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, Jewish, right? Supposedly Jewish by blood, right? How do you prove that you're Jewish by blood? Do they do DNA tests? They say, well, you have to have a family member who's Jewish. And with Orthodox Jewish, it's probably the father. You have to have, the father has to be Jewish, right? But here's the thing, at what point did that come into existence? If you could prove that by blood, look at a person's DNA and went, oh, well here in this part of the helix, clearly this is the Jewish gene. This is what makes a person Jewish. See, it's purple, right? At what point did that happen, right? Because before there was Judaism, there was Israel. Israel initially meant multiple gods. Land of multiple gods. You look at the book of Enoch, it talks about human beings as being like different gods. You look at like, it is endless. It is endless. There is so much diversity. There is so much diversity, right? Like, the Jewish religion came into existence at some point. It had not always existed. And before there was even Israel or Jews, there was something else. I think it was Sumerian, but there was something else, right? Before Sumerian, there was something else. Before the Egyptians, there was something else. We had these ideas in our heads, like the I am Canadian, period. Right? Well, this is all constructed. Right? The border is literally constructed. The identity is literally constructed. Right? Everyone's various ideas of God, even if they say that God specifically wrote this, right, is constructed. I'm not going to challenge them on it, but it's clearly constructed. We all know it. They adopt it as a faith, as a belief, right? Or they have some sort of way of explaining it or something along that line. But it is a construct, right? And they adhere to it firmly as a form of faith. So in the Christian concept of God, of God being a creator, right? God created man, God created woman, God created Adam and Eve, right? There are so many different variations of what God or a God is, right? So my question to you is, how do you define God? Because the person sitting right next to you might have a completely different definition of what that is. And if God in the Christian sense is our creator, right, then that's step one. It's a step one, step two.